Okay, we are live.
All right. We're calling the March 29th, 2021 Public Services Committee meeting to order. Jenny, would you please call roll?
Ms. Fox?
Here.
And Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Here. All right. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of October 5th, 2020?
So moved.
Second. Would you call roll, Jenny?
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
And Ms. Fox?
Yes. All right. Now we'll move on to staff update, and I think we're going to be hearing from the chief and Lieutenant Tabernick, I think. Welcome.
Thank you.
And
Thank
Jason,
you.
I guess, too.
Yes.
All right.
So, it'll be I and Lieutenant Tabernick and Director Somerville. Lieutenant Latanzi contributed to our presentation today. However, he's out of the office this week. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to present this afternoon. We want to certainly fill you in on, it's been a while since we've been back at the Public Services Committee, so we have a lot to fill you in on, and we will do everything we can, though, to honor the time commitment of all the rest of the agenda today. So we wanted to start and lay the foundation. Anytime we have a discussion about the police department, we want to begin with what is most important to us, which is our mission statement and core values. Our mission statement in brief: protection, service, and public safety in partnership with the community is our focus, and everything that we're going to talk about in our presentation tonight, including our goals and objectives, programs, accomplishments, and highlights, are all focused on contributing to and delivering on that same mission of protection, service, and public safety in partnership with members of our community. And everything that we do should also be focused and filtered through our core values of professionalism, integrity, respect, and commitment. So we just wanted to make sure we laid that foundation as we talk about the rest of the activities in the police department. So our goals, just as a reframing for the conversation today, in addition to the mission statement, our goals that we focus on each and every year are designed to contribute directly to accomplishment of that mission statement. And the goals that we focus on are critical incident response and preparedness, theft defense reduction throughout the city, overall traffic safety improvement, and effectively addressing issues of significant community concern. So those goals are our focuses for us as well. Within those goals, we have a few goals that we track as metric-driven goals, and we wanted to give an update today on how we performed last year in progress towards accomplishing, in particular, our goals of reducing theft offenses in the city and improving traffic safety. Fortunately, last year, what we saw were reductions in theft offenses overall throughout the city. We also saw a reduction of theft from vehicle offenses, which is the #1 report of criminal offense that we take each and every year in Dublin. We saw a reduction of burglary and B&E offenses, and while it was just a reduction by 1 from the previous year's total in 2019, one of the highlights and focuses for us as we have conversations about crime in the community is each one of those statistics represent a victim. They represent somebody who was impacted by crime. So while we only reduced by 1 offense between 19 and 20's totals for burglary and B&E offenses, we are glad to say that we were able to reduce it at all, and that one person didn't end up filing an additional report that would have equaled the total of years previous. So for each of these offenses, or for each of these categories, theft offenses overall, theft from vehicle offenses, and burglary and B&E, they were moderate reductions from the year previous. We were happy to see that there were reductions, and we're continuing to work towards, again, ultimately, we'd like to see a community that has no crime, and we will continue to work in effort to that, the furtherance of that, accomplishing that mission. And then the last metric we wanted to provide and give an update on was the other category that we track very carefully, are traffic crashes in the city. And so last year we saw a significant reduction in traffic crashes, which frankly, we had 300 fewer crashes that occurred that were reported. That I don't know is entirely sustainable, because a lot of that is contributable to the pandemic last year and frankly, just less people being out on the roadway. We were happy to see less crashes. I just don't know that that maybe is something we could expect in the future, but we will do everything we can to continue to improve traffic safety throughout the city. Now, these goals we focus on each and every day as part of our delivery of service and protection in the community. We have a crime analyst that tracks this information and pays close attention to where offenses are occurring, where traffic crashes are occurring, and then routinely puts that information together and shares it in a document with our supervisors each month as an analysis of our crime activity and traffic activity. That document then is distributed to our supervisors, who use that to guide effectively and efficiently using the resources in their work groups to, again, accomplish those goals that contribute to our mission as an organization. And so one of the things that we take from the analysis of our crime activity or our traffic crash activity are on the occasions where we see patterns, problems, places, or people that are identified as things that we can address in furtherance of our goals. We have our supervisors focus on strategies and tactics to address those issues. One of the trends we saw last year that I wanted to highlight, and we've highlighted in the community as well in meetings, is we saw 38 vehicles stolen in 2020, which was an increase for us. The important piece of information taking forward on that number in particular is when we look at those individual offenses and those reports, the majority of those vehicles that were stolen were unlocked with the keys left in the vehicle. So in today's day and age, where vehicles start with just a push of a button and the fob is something that we all carry around either in our pocket or in a purse, or we set in the console when we take off in the car, the reminder for us going forward for members of our community is if you can take the keys with you, much like we've message in the past, just taking property from the vehicle lessens the likelihood that you may be a victim of any of these offenses and helps us contribute again to that overall goal of reducing theft offenses within our city. So we wanted to just make sure we highlighted what we saw in 2020 and brought you up to date with how we work towards accomplishing those two goals. Next slide. So there are a couple other highlights. Again, any opportunity that we get to highlight our officers' activity in contributing toward those goals, and we wanted to make sure we took an opportunity to highlight some recent incidents that our officers were involved in, where we had successful resolution of criminal occurrences. So Officer Jordan Fraley, who is a third shift officer, and third shift in general, has done a very good job of working active surveillance based, again, on that crime analysis and data that we have taken a look at to figure out where are we experiencing or likely to experience incidents of crime in the future. Third shift was conducting unmarked surveillance with an officer in one of our apartment complexes, and Officer Jordan Fraley, who is relatively new to the organization but has quickly jumped in to contribute, was able to observe a couple of individuals who were trying door handles in an apartment complex. They were able to locate those individuals and stop them and actually prevent thefts from occurring in our city and return property back to owners. And actually the individuals who were involved in those offenses were in a stolen vehicle, which again was an activity that had traveled into our city, but was also impacting other area communities as well. So it was a good, successful response and prevention of additional thefts by Officer Fraley. The other couple of incidents we wanted to highlight, because these really were partnerships with our community. And when we talk to members of our community, what we ask is, if you see something suspicious and you see something that looks like it may be criminal in nature, please call us so that we can respond and we can handle the issue without you having to intervene. And in both of these circumstances, we had community members who observed in the first a burglary occurrence, somebody who was entering garages. We had a community member call us. We were able to quickly respond to the area by a number of officers and work units within the organization, our community impact unit, our detective bureau, and our patrol, all combined for that response. We were able to locate the individual, locate stolen property, and get that property returned in some instances before anybody even knew that the property was missing. So excellent response and excellent partnership with members of our community. And the other listed there in an apartment complex, again, theft from vehicle being our #1 report that we receive. We had a community member who saw somebody what looked like they were trying door handles on vehicles. They actually removed a television from a vehicle. They called us. We were able to get the vehicle stopped. We located the stolen television. We're able to return that property to the owner. And also in interviewing the suspects, we're able to tie them to other offenses that have occurred in the surrounding Columbus area. Again, helping resolve not just issues of crime for our community, but for other communities as well. So we just want to make sure we highlighted those as examples of our officers being in the right place at the right time, armed with the right information to be able to keep our community safe. The other highlight I have before I pass it along to Lieutenant Tabernick, so our fourth goal that we listed at the beginning of the presentation is our effectiveness in addressing issues of significant community concern. And for us, a highlight for the last year's discussion has been the conversations that we had with members of our community over the summer as protests and demonstrations came to Dublin, and we got to lean in and have conversation about community perspectives and concerns over policing in America, and questions and curiosity about what our policing practices are here in Dublin. And as you are both aware, the enactment of the Chiefs Advisory Committee and the Community Task Force were natural extensions of that conversation that began over the summer. So we've been very, very fortunate to have a group of 10 members approved by council to become that formal committee for us as the Chiefs Advisory Committee. We've had, I think, 7 meetings so far. And the topics of discussion for us started with the School Resource Officer Program. We had several meetings devoted to discussing the program, providing documentation on the program, and then meeting and speaking with our school resource officers, and really question and answer engagement between members of the committee and members of our community education unit. We've also leaned forward into some discussions moving forward with the committee in regard to our response to resistance or use of force policy, rendering aid in the aftermath of a response to resistance encounter. Our discussions on will include in the future our policy on body-worn camera, officer-involved critical incidents, response to civil disturbances, and talking about those policies with members of the committee so we can get feedback and perspective to make sure we're meeting community expectation as we move forward and edit our policy, as we're always looking to rely on not just past practice, but best practices in our industry. And having an opportunity to have that conversation with the advisory committee is going to be integral to us understanding that we are meeting the public's expectations moving forward. The last bullet that I have underneath there really has been conversations as they present the opportunity for us to talk with the members of the advisory committee on current events. We started this discussion in the summer really with focus and perspective on policing practices in America and how that affects what we are doing here as far as our expectations from community members on our policing practices, but also our policing practices as we observe events that occur around the nation as well. So holding a space during the meetings to talk about current events has become critical to us being able to lean into very focused conversation with our advisory committee members so we can hear not just their issues and concerns about crime, but also fear of crime and safety and security in our community. And so we've been very grateful to have those those conversations and communication with members of the advisory committee. So we just wanted to highlight this as, again, a sub-objective under that goal of effectively addressing issues of significant community concern. I would present this is exactly what we were talking about when we laid that goal in front of us last year, is community outreach and engagement, and this has really delivered on that expectation for us and expectation for the community as well. And so with that, I will turn it over for the next few slides to Lieutenant Tabernick.
Thanks, Chief. Good afternoon, members of council. Want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be able to present on some of the updates specific to my bureau. And I want to thank Chief for doing the same. I really appreciate that. As Chief discussed, we are a goal-oriented organization, as you know, and the 3 updates that I have here are going to be directly in line with those goals. So our first one, community outreach and engagement. These are projects that are really exciting for us as we continue to look for opportunities to reach out to our community and be community leaders and be engaged with our community. So the first one you see there, Welcome Warehouse, senior lunches, and also our partnership with the food pantry. So starting last summer, we have given out over 1,200 senior lunches over the course of 6 or 7 events, and then also partnered with the Welcome Warehouse on 2 different occasions and the food pantry on 2 different occasions. And the important piece of this is these were tremendous opportunities for officers, our community liaison officers, our school resource officers to just interact with different community members, diverse community members, and have those community members really put a face to the badge. I mean, that's really important to us. That's why it's so exciting to be able to be a part of to be a part of all three of those. And the second thing here, really exciting, we're in the infant stages, but we have a recently formed partnership with the Starfish Assignment. The Starfish Assignment was founded by Nicole Banks, who actually is a Dublin, not Dublin proper, but Dublin school resident, and she has a son over at Davis Middle School. And we got connected with her through the Columbus Police Department, and the Starfish Assignment does a lot of connectivity with police officers and their community. So the two that I have on here, books and badges. If you didn't know, you could see right there in the picture, Chief Pice was the first one to be a part of books and badges. He went down to Daniel Wright Elementary School, where all of his kids graduated a little while ago, and had the opportunity to read to elementary school students. And then also, after reading the book, each student is provided with a copy of that book that has a sticker inside that is co-signed, if you will, by the Starfish Assignment and the Dublin Police Department. So again, another really good opportunity for our officers to be involved with the community in a very positive way, fostering relationships at a very early age in this example. Another piece with the Starfish Assignment is going to be a spring bike drive. So we are planning to have a bike drive here in the city, and we're going to ask our residents for help collecting bikes, lightly used bikes or brand new bikes, so that we can provide those to children in need. And again, that's just going to be a fantastic partnership with Starfish Assignment, and we have full confidence that our community will support us in that. Go to the next slide, please. Our comprehensive wellness approach, again, another really exciting piece for us here. I'm going to go ahead and just read the mission of our approach here, just so, because there's some very intentional verbiage here. So the mission of this comprehensive wellness initiative is to improve and enhance the quality of life and job enrichment for all members of the Dublin Police Department utilizing a holistic approach. The initiative will help to change the culture of the organization regarding the multifacets of mental health, wellness, and resiliency. In turn, our members will provide the highest level of service on each interaction with the community and other law enforcement stakeholders. So that last piece is the real so what of this. We want to make sure that we are providing our officers, providing our communication technicians, providing all the members of the Dublin Police Department with the skills, the resources to truly be resilient, so that we can then deliver on our promise to the citizens of Dublin in the form of public safety and service. So you can see a list of pieces here that all go into our comprehensive approach. A suicide prevention town hall. Before COVID hit, we were on track to deliver a mental health town hall last year. Unfortunately, we all know what happened there, but we are now on track and have transitioned to a suicide prevention town hall later this September. We continue to leverage our partnership with Centero. They're great community partners with us. We have connectivity with several members, to include one member who's on the Chiefs Advisory Committee. And then we have a lot of connectivity on projects with them. So we'll continue to leverage that partnership. The STAR app is a wellness app that we're looking to provide to all of our members, again, to make sure our members are resilient so that we can provide that service to our community. And this STAR app is in partnership with Dr. Yeager down at Ohio State, which is a fantastic opportunity for us to partner here regionally on an evidence-based approach to wellness. The fourth thing you see on there is the creation of a peer support team. That's something that we find vitally important for not only those acute incidents that we call critical incidents, but also the ongoing care of our peers. We find that to be vitally important, and we are tracking to create that team later this year. And the last piece that we just started exploring is the mental health first aid check-ins. And again, this would be for all of our members, not just our sworn members, but to provide them an opportunity to speak to someone in the mental health field. So once again, we are providing the resources so our members are resilient and can deliver on that service to our community. If you mind going to the next slide, please. And the last piece here, we talk about goals-wise, issues of significant community concern. That's what these two are going to touch upon. So these are a few updates on investigations. And combating human trafficking is something that has become even more important to us over the last few years. And we have a few detectives and our sergeant over the community impact unit that have done a fantastic job in really leading the region, Central Ohio region, in trying to combat human trafficking, and most importantly, providing resources to the victims of human trafficking. And Sergeant Gallagher and Investigator Jager helped with a city training on human trafficking awareness and investigation last month, which was eye-opening for some of our employees in the city, but most importantly, provided awareness so that if they saw something, they could call us, and we can help try to work through that. And we saw it just an example here. We saw it in practice with a missing 15-year-old who we rescued from a local hotel here, who was most likely being human trafficked by a 30-ish-year-old male, and we were able to rescue her, get her back to her mom, intervene in that. And again, like Chief said, with every statistic, there's a victim behind it. So we feel it's vitally important to take a victim-centered approach. And in this case, we're able to have a positive resolution for that young girl. The last two pieces on here, we had the city's first homicide in 2 years. And we also had an attempted homicide investigation that our detectives did some fantastic work on. And again, the so what behind this is the second bullet there, that they were able to file the charges and provide that closure to the victims. These both were incidents that involved multi-bureaus. When I say multi-bureaus, I mean investigations, I mean patrol officers, I mean our NRECC partners, all working to collaborate to eventually, in these two cases, file charges and bring that closure for the grieving victims. So those are just a few highlights there. Again, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having us. And like the chief said, it's been a very productive year, even though it was a pandemic year. And that was very true for our staff members in the Northwest Regional Emergency Communications Center. So I wanted to take a few minutes to go over a couple of the big 2020 highlights at NRECC. First and foremost, we onboarded Worthington Police and Worthington Fire as our latest customers and partners at NRECC. That brought us a police department of about 32 officers and a full service fire department that serves Worthington and Sharon Township. And that was a very smooth transition. We've gotten pretty good at the onboarding process, and everything has been up and running since October seamlessly. And I think we're working with some partners that are very like-minded when it comes to service to the community above and beyond just the safety service. And that runs through all of the partners that we have as part of NRECC. And I'm always happy to say we have signed a renewal for one of our existing partners. Upper Arlington agreed to another 3-year agreement for service to be provided to their police and fire departments. So they'll be here for their years 4, 5, and 6. And we'll be renewing the city of Hilliard at the start of 2022, along with the Norwich Township Fire Department. So we're in a very good position with all of our partners at NRECC, and it's a pleasure to work with all of the communities. Also in 2020, we did implementation of our restructure. With the onboarding of Worthington, we did a complete shakeup of our management in the center. And one of our primary goals in that restructure was to make sure that we had adequate supervision, not just due to the increased number of telecommunicators that we have working in the center, but it was important for us to have supervisors on duty 24 hours a day that could make the decisions and calls that need to be made during critical incidents, weather-related events, disasters, large-scale events. And with that restructure, we hired on Stephen Meddy, who I'm very proud to say we stole from our newest partner at Worthington. Steve was an operations lieutenant there and made the change over to communications and is now overseeing the room as the operations manager. We promoted 3 existing staff members to the position of communication manager. That's Lauren Yancannon, Stephanie Skipworth, and Amy Hager, and they'll be overseeing the 3-shift operations in the center. And then it's always fun when you get to move somebody up in the organization and give them a bigger role, especially a leadership role. And we promoted supervisors from within the organization, Jen Kane, Katie Edwards, and Matt Robbins. And we have 2 additional supervisors who have been supervisors for us for a couple of years, Steve Watsford and Jess Posey. So we're at the final stages of building out the NRECC concept. That'll give us an operations manager, 3 managers, 6 shift supervisors, and 28 telecommunicators. A little bit of a far and away from the 7 dispatchers we had when I started way back in 1992. And a couple of big events that are going to go on this year that you'll be hearing a lot about. It is our on-site assessment year for the Commission for Law Enforcement Accreditation. And we're actually going through an assessment for 2 accreditations. As you know, the police department has been accredited as a law enforcement agency since 1990. But our communications center has also been independently internationally accredited as part of CALIA for the last 4 years. And this will be our first reaccreditation. So you can expect to see assessors on site here in November. And that will include a public comment period, both in person and via telephone, and then a complete assessment of all of our policies, procedures, and proofs to ensure, like we always say here, we're not just up on the latest practice, but we are up on the best practice in our industry. And I'm going to hand it back over to Chief Pice.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Thank you, Director. Appreciate you jumping in and sharing the information. Couple of last-minute slides here. We just wanted to make sure we gave an awareness for the discussion today. As we've had discussion at the city level and at the council level about the designated outdoor refreshment area, we just wanted to give you an idea of what our preparation is for the pilot program coming in the near future. We do intend to increase our staffing availability so we can designate staffing during the times that we have the DORA in operation during the pilot. So we're going to add some additional staffing in the area. One of the transitions we made as an organization over the last year was designating that area of historic Dublin and Bridge Park as its own district within the city. We've had largely the same district assignment over the last 20 years. And as the community has changed and the landscape has changed, we felt like we needed to at least look at that area as a unique change in our community and how we are responding and providing protection and service in both historic Dublin and in Bridge Park. So we do intend to increase our available staffing during the DORA's pilot in the near future. That will include some bike officer presence. We just added 8 new officers for assignment to our bike unit, so that should increase the number of staff we have available to be able to utilize the bike in that area. And the other support that we provided, or we intend to provide and have added in the last year, is our drone unit as a opportunity for us to observe from a different capacity and see how things are going, and maybe be able to deploy our officers a little more effectively and efficiently throughout the area to make sure that everything is safe and certainly that we encourage a safe, enjoyable, and vibrant atmosphere. Oh, and before I forget, we did hear during some of the public discussion that there were some concerns about traffic as we move into an opportunity to test out the DORA in Dublin. So we do intend on, during those initial pilots, designating a traffic unit to focus in the areas to make sure pedestrian traffic is safe and vehicular traffic is safe in both historic Dublin and in the Bridge Park area. And then the last piece that I just touched upon during this slide, Jay, if you can advance just one more, was just an update on our drone unit. It was an opportunity for us to move a new piece of technology into our resources within the organization in the last year. Very proud that we have 10 FAA licensed drone pilots within the organization, 2 of which are actually non-sworn members who are also able to pilot on the occasions we can free up our officers to respond to an event and utilize those other resources to help pilot the drone. We've had up to date 483 flights and over 81 hours of flight time. We continue to learn and grow and develop as we move forward with the program. But just some highlights: locating missing persons, visual support for high-risk operations or emergency responses, and then special events and mutual aid will be the opportunity as we open up the community and special events in the future for us to be able to utilize that technology to, again, help observe from a different vantage point and help guide our resources more effectively and efficiently as we continue to provide protection and service to members of our community. And with that, that is the completion of our presentation. We'd certainly be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions, Kat?
First of all, thank you all. I mean, I'm always so impressed with what you guys do every day, but when you see the presentations and hear the statistics and the expertise, and it really is impressive, and thank you. One of the questions that I know this has been a really tough year for just everybody, and I would be interested from your guys' vantage point what you see or feel differently that's happened in the community that you think it's important that potentially council and that we're aware of. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but thoughts on that?
That's a great question, and I think that the largest piece we sort of talked about, and Lieutenant Tabernick has done a very good job of explaining what we're moving towards with wellness, and so in the aftermath of the pandemic, there are a lot of things that are still sorting themselves out at an economic level, at an employment level, from a crime and safety issue. But we all know that we experience globally a crisis, a critical event that was ongoing and has fatigued in a lot of directions. So internally, externally for us, that discussion of mental health, mental, emotional wellness, resiliency for not just our members of our organization, that's the foundation we're building here, but also partnering with the community resources to make sure that that resiliency is there for our community members as well. And the discussions that we've had at the advisory committee with Centero, we were moving in that direction, moving into 2020 last year before any of us knew what we were going to be experiencing, and are still in some ways working our way and navigating through. I think that focus and conversation out loud in a town hall capacity about mental health, suicide awareness and suicide prevention, leaning out as resources both from the police department but as community resources to be able to support is something that we've done very well through the pandemic at a city level, but that resiliency and connectivity will be absolutely fundamentally necessary to help our community navigate the aftermath as well. And so I think that for us, that's a heavy focus for us because it informs so many things that we respond to, but are also observing to make sure we have a pulse on to make sure we can help solve community problems from our perspective, and in partnership with any other resources we can connect to make sure there's resiliency and safety and protection in our community moving forward as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It is so important for everyone to be able to say, I need to talk to somebody. I need some help. I'm here for you if you need me, or, just be able to have that conversation is so important. And appreciate that. And I very much also appreciate all the outreach that you guys have done this year to be in the places where people can ask those questions and see you and know that's there for folks. So thank you. Appreciate it.
I would ask this question. It has been a difficult year, obviously, and there have been so many things that have come across the path that I think have shaken us all. And the police especially, and I know as the council feels, and I know this community feels this way, is that we are concerned about our police department. We're concerned about your health and well-being. We're concerned about how you feel that you have the community support. And I know frequently, and I was Saturday night, Kathy and I were down with many of the officers and chief, hearing the question, do you feel safe? And it was a very broad yes. But I am curious, are there areas in the community we should be thinking about that people don't feel that way? Are there voices that you're hearing that we need to hear that maybe people don't feel safe? I don't believe that's the case, but I'm asking you if you feel that there's voices where people feel they're uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and some of the conversation we've been fortunate to have with members of our advisory committee, and I held a little place to talk about current events, and specifically in our last meeting, the chair of the committee held space so we could talk about events that didn't occur in Dublin but still had impact on residents for our community members, and specifically we talked about the homicides and the tragedy in Atlanta and how that had impact on residents for our community members, our Asian American community members in particular, who some of them shared directly with us as members of the committee, their experience and sharing. They feel comfortable in Dublin, but that doesn't extend maybe to all areas of Columbus. And so I think for us, part of that opportunity that we have with the connectivity to the advisory committee and hopefully opening us up to other members of the community who are comfortable coming forward and sharing, it's not just an issue of crime, it's an issue of safety and security within their community. And so leaning into that, I think, is an opportunity for us to continue moving forward to open ourselves to hearing how do we keep everybody safe from crime, but also have a sense of safety and security in their own home. Do they feel protected? Do they feel supported in our community here in Dublin? Which again, I want to give credit and thanks and gratitude to the city manager and to the members of council for leaning forward and creating these two bodies to have that ongoing discussion in our community about how we support and lean forward to people who feel vulnerable in their community.
Well, I really appreciate that. And Lieutenant Tabernick, I think you see it yourself in the community relations piece that people have to feel comfortable where they live. And I think that we have a unique opportunity because of the way this community feels about the police department. They feel so supportive of it that maybe we can share that kind of good work with other people and show them that it's possible to have a community of supportive police officers and citizens that feel that they are there for each other. So are there any resource, is there anything that council can do for you that you need that we're maybe not addressing? That's a big loaded question, isn't it? Right. But I guess I'm saying.
It's a great question to ask because it's an opportunity for us to reflect. We are tremendously blessed to be supported by this community, by members of council. When we do need, we ask, and we always know we're going to be supported. So I think we have what we need right now. We're just thankful and grateful again to have that support to be positioned in a very extraordinary time that this last year has been, to be there as a resource for our community to continue to keep people safe. And to keep people feeling safe. And so, we thank you for all the support we've had, and we appreciate the offer.
Right. And I would just encourage anybody that's watching, which I'm sure there aren't any, but we say this all the time, drop a note, write a letter, drop an email to our officers and thank them for the work they do, because it's a hard job, but it's a great job that you do for us, and we appreciate it. So thank you for the presentation. We learned quite a bit today.
Thank you.
Did I see the note that you're going to have an academy this summer, Citizen?
We do intend to. Yes, we're just getting ready to release that so that we can hopefully by that time, come the late summer, early fall, we'll be able to meet in person. So fingers crossed, and looking forward to it.
That's great. And the self-defense too. I think that's a wonderful program as well. And I'm looking forward to seeing that get back on board. So, all right. Thank you very much. All right, I think our next item on the agenda is Parks and Recreation Master Plan update, and I think that's Matt Ehrman. I think.
Yes, it is. Good afternoon, everyone. I am going to share my screen, hopefully successfully, and you can just verify that it is being shared. I take the silence as no.
No, we don't see it yet.
Bear with me.
sorry, committee members, but I think we have Lisa Wilson to present on court services before Parks and Recreation. Just
Oh,
don't want her to get
sorry,
skipped.
we didn't see that.
I will work on my technical difficulty.
There you go. Okay, you're right. Thank you, Nick.
You're
Lisa.
welcome.
That's all right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now let's see if I can share my screen here.
There you are. You're on.
You can see it.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about court services, although it is a little intimidating to follow the police department after their presentation, but I'll do my best here. Let's see here. So as far as court services is concerned, in addition to myself, there are 3 other full-time staff members and 1 permanent part-time staff member. Diane J. Rahman is our records retention technician. She is part-time, and she is responsible for maintaining the record storage facility here at the Justice Center. Janice Spiker is our diversion officer, and she administers all of the diversion programs that we offer. Bailey Sanagate is the court clerk, and she is responsible for processing all the court cases, payments, filings, and preparing and maintaining the court docket. And then Sharon Haig is our administrative support, and she makes sure all of our bills get paid on time. She scans all of our case files and just provides support to the entire team here at court. Some of the key functions in court services is we process cases filed under Dublin City Code, which includes most misdemeanor, traffic, and criminal. There are a few exceptions, such as domestic violence and repeat OVI offenses. Those end up being filed downtown in municipal court. We monitor cases for compliance with court orders to ensure that defendants fulfill their obligations with the court. If someone, say, fails to pay or complete their community service or complete a defensive driving course that the magistrate may have ordered, we bring that back to the magistrate's attention and then follow his orders to issue either a summons or an arrest warrant or suspend somebody's driving privileges or possibly block their registration to their vehicle. Each month, all the fines, fees, and costs that we collect are reconciled and dispersed to the city's general fund, to the appropriate county, depending on where the offense occurred, and to the state of Ohio. We report quarterly statistics to the Supreme Court as required by the Ohio Revised Code 1905.033. We report traffic convictions weekly to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles as required by 4513.37 of the Ohio Revised Code, and criminal convictions to the BCI, Bureau of Criminal Identification and Investigation, also is required by the Ohio Revised Code. And then lastly, we administer a number of supervision programs. Here in Mayor's Court, we have in total 4 diversion programs. The juvenile diversion programs, we have a traffic and criminal as well as an adult traffic and criminal program. Diversion is a pre-conviction type of program. It's for first-time offenders. It diverts them from formal court. And if they successfully complete the program, then those charges are dismissed or never filed in the first place. And then we also have probation and what we call PNC, or provided no convictions. And those are post-conviction programs that allow offenders to remain in the community while being supervised in lieu of going to jail. Basically, the magistrate will sentence someone to a certain period of time or certain number of days in jail, and then he will suspend those days for a period of probation or PNC. And as long as the individual successfully completes that supervision period, they will not have to serve any time in jail. This slide here represents our annual caseload for the last 4 years, broken down by case type, which is parking, OVI, criminal, and traffic. As you can see, the traffic violations make up the majority of our caseload. And I just want to point out that if not for COVID-19, I believe our numbers for 2020 would have been closer to our numbers in 2018. And this is due to the fact that we didn't receive any cases for approximately 3 months, from March to June, when we were first under the state of emergency. All of those charges were filed downtown in municipal court. And then I also would just, want to add that if the first few months of 2021 are any indication, it appears as though this year our numbers probably fall somewhere in between the numbers of 2017 and 2018. This slide represents the revenue that the court generated over the last 4 years, and it was turned over to the state of Ohio, Delaware, Franklin, or Union County, and then, of course, the city's general fund. And again, I expect that to increase this year relative to the increase in the cases that we're already beginning to see. This first performance metric here is our case clearance rate. This is our ability to keep up with our incoming caseload. Our benchmark on this would be 100% or higher, and a rate of over 100% just means that we're closing more cases in a specific time period than what we received. And sometimes you've got carryover from one time period to another, and then you've also got cases that are in warrant status that get reactivated. So sometimes you do end up with a clearance rate of over 100%. But the blue bars here indicate the Dublin Mayor's Court clearance rate, and the green bar represents the state average of all of the mayor's courts. And unfortunately, the state has not published the statistics for 2019 and 2020 yet, but more now than ever, due to COVID and our limited capacity in the courtroom, it's important that we keep up with our caseload and not develop a backlog. So I think we're doing real well in that area. This slide is our reliability and integrity of our case files. A reliable and accurate case file system is truly fundamental to the effectiveness of our operations. The file content reliability measures the extent of correspondence between the case file summary and the actual file contents. So basically it is, does every entry have a document, and does every document have an entry? And then the second part of that is the organization and completeness of the file, which measures whether the contents are organized and formatted according to the established practice, and that key documents are contained within the case file. So with this metric, we strive to achieve 95% or higher. And as you can see, we've been successful doing that over the past 3 years. And I'm very pleased with 2020 and the fact that, we had a lot of procedural and operational changes. And the fact that we were able to remain above that benchmark was very significant. And then this last metric I have for court services is the diversion probation completion rate. This is the percentage of individuals who successfully complete the program. we have a benchmark of 75%, and this slide shows that we've been successful in exceeding that benchmark for the last 4 years. And this basically tells us if our programs and conditions are realistic and if we're achieving our mission in providing education and guidance to the offenders. And then this final slide related to court functions is just an informational one, and this shows the number of community service hours completed over the last 2 years by both adults and juveniles. So pretty proud of the number there of service hours that were completed. And then in addition to court services, our team is responsible for the citywide records management program. This program was established in the early 1990s, and it's designed to ensure efficient methods of storage and retrieval, excuse me, and eliminate the unnecessary retention of records. The way we accomplish this is by providing citywide support to all the division and departments in managing the records. As I mentioned earlier, we have a central storage facility here at the Justice Center. Currently have about 2,000 cubic feet of records in the facility. And this is in addition to some of the historical records that we have stored offsite with fireproof records. And then we coordinate the destruction of records after receiving approval from the Records Commission and ensuring that it's within the timeframes in the retention schedule. And then we also maintain that retention schedule and by updating any changes, running any changes by the Records Commission, the State of Ohio auditors, and the Ohio History Connection, and then staff serve as chairperson and secretary of the Records Commission. And then this last slide just shows the amount of records that we've received into the central storage facility versus the amount of records destroyed. Typically, we do destroy more records than we take in, especially, in recent days, recent times, since more and more divisions, departments are going to electronic records. So that really has reduced the need for storage of paper records. So that is basically my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Lisa?
Lisa, thank you very much. I think that's the most thorough background that I've received on your group. It's amazing work. So I so appreciate it. Thank you. Very helpful. The community service numbers, who are the community service partners that you work with?
We have a list of agencies that will accept community service workers, although we put it on the offender to find their own community service, because not all of our folks live in the Dublin community. So sometimes in order for them to be successful, they need to do it closer to home, especially if they don't have transportation or don't have a driver's license. But Janice checks with our agencies every year to make sure they're still interested and willing to accept community service workers. I will say it has become more difficult through the years to find agencies in Dublin, because Christine Nardekia and her volunteer program is just phenomenal and is able to support most of the agencies in Dublin. So we do tend to see our clients, I guess you could say, going outside, the Dublin community. So, but we haven't run into a problem of not being able to get somebody placed. So that's a good thing.
Right. Thank you. And thank you again for all the great work. Very much appreciated.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I agree with Kathy that it's been a while since I've heard all the work that you do over in the court area. And I know you had the numbers on one of the slides, but just kind of as an average, how many cases would you see in a week on an average?
In a week, I would say, doing the math, can't do it in my head. Probably about 50.
50?
In normal times.
Okay.
Yeah.
50. Court is open on which days? Not Monday through Friday. Only on certain days, right?
But yeah, we hold court. Court is held on Tuesday afternoons.
Tuesday afternoons.
And then we have prisoner hearings on Monday and Friday mornings.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, thank you, Lisa. I really appreciate it.
You're quite well. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Sure. All right. All right, Matt, it seems like now it is your turn.
All right, well, we'll try this one more time here and see
Okay.
where we get to.
And that's a 400 and some page master plan that we read today, I want you to know.
Well, good, because I think I'm going to go through page by page. We'll do a page turn for the next, I don't know,
It's
day or
5 o'clock,
two.
so you have about, I don't know, you got to do a page, about 10 pages a minute. Okay, go.
Well, you know, I will tell you, looking back on that, you know, the creation of that master plan, it was a work in progress. I'm telling you, it was a lot of work and a lot of people involved. So it was a lot of fun. We learned a lot about ourselves, and you know, that was 10 years ago. So, you know, one of the things that I wanted to have the opportunity here, you'll recall I brought this up to City Council a few meetings ago about the idea of updating our master plan. And it's not by just idea or thought or interest. It is something that we really take dearly in this city as far as our planning efforts go, and making sure that we're accommodating the needs of the community. So, you know, one of the things that I wanted to discuss, several things I wanted to discuss this evening, have to do with where we go from here. And that has to do with this commission or this committee providing some input to the Community Services Advisory Commission, so that they can maybe take this a little bit step further and bring it back to council as a whole. So for the purpose of this presentation, I just wanted to talk a little bit about why we're doing it, some of the background of the existing plan that we have in place today, our current plan overview, and then the implementation and completion of the current plan. Then looking ahead at some of the trends and projections, some of the things that are really affecting the Parks and Recreation industry. It's very interesting how things have completely shifted within the last year, and then talk a little bit about the process and get some thoughts from you all as we go forward. As I mentioned, historically, we've really taken an opportunity to planned soundly for the community as a policy formulated effort and providing directives for and understanding the market and product that we deliver. And, you know, most of that we have to make sure that we're understanding the past of where we've been, assessing the present, and then certainly envisioning the future, which is becoming a little bit more difficult as time has gone on. One of the other main reasons here for us to take a look at the master plan is our accreditation, our national accreditation, established by the National Recreation and Parks Association and their commission. It does have 154 national standards of best practices, and we have been accredited for the last 10 years. We are up for a new reaccreditation here in April, and we're looking forward for that site visit to become reaccredited for the third time in our history. And then certainly as we go through that accreditation process, they want to check and make sure that our Parks and Recreation master plan, as well as the associated strategic action plan of how we're implementing that plan, are included in our everyday lives. So that is a fundamental requirement, and if we don't have it, then we will not meet those best practices. So this is one of the other reasons that we're taking a look at this. So the current master plan, it was adopted back in 2010 by City Council. It was led by staff and consultants, and as you can see by the list there, we involved the entire community from just about every angle we could achieve to get input as far as, you know, what do we want to include in this master plan. as I mentioned, if you look at the list of the chapters here, this is what you would normally find, I would say 10 years ago in a typical Parks and Recreation master plan. The interesting thing that we had to do as a city, we had to take a look and take a step back on a lot of these things and realize that we didn't have policies or formalized plans or practices and inventories and things in place. So a lot of our assessment of ourselves was more critical in nature of where do we establish ourselves, setting ourselves up so we can actually start leaning forward. So just a quick overview of each of these chapters. I'm not going to go into great lengths, but I think it's important just to touch on some of the key components of each. The introduction talks about the internal and external factors associated with the Parks and Recreation system. As you would expect, all of these components were considered and looked at and reflected upon as we went through and developed the plan itself. The demographics is very important. We need to understand the population trends. We need to understand those from a local standpoint, as well as a regional, state, and national standpoint as well. And, those key things give us a big indication as to where we need to plan for the future. So it took a really good demographic look at where we were 10 years ago looking forward. The organizational analysis, I don't know if you all will recall, but back in before 2015, we were I'll just say a disjointed department. We had each of our divisions were respectively managing themselves as individual work units. And so this helped us bring our organizational structure and our modifications to improve efficiencies and enhance our customer service delivery, decrease duplications, and certainly minimize staffing costs. And over the years, we have made great strides in making some really good organizational adjustments. Chapter 4 takes a look at our parks and natural resources inventory. As you can imagine, our parks inventory is rather extensive compared to most municipalities, and our environmental assessment was taken as part of that to make sure we understand the connection of just parkland versus the natural resources and how they're connected. And then taking a look at our recreational services. This was a very interesting chapter for us in Chapter 5. As you all know, we provide a volume and plethora of types of programs for just about every need and everybody in our community, and we're very fortunate to be able to do so. And this chapter, or the discussion among this, gave us an opportunity to really take a look at our community needs and what our levels of service need to be to acquire or to accommodate those needs. A case in point, as you know, our youth sports programs are very popular. They're very political. We only have limited numbers of resources, and we've been challenged over the years trying to make sure that we are accommodating those as best we can. As a result of this plan, just one simple form of language that was put into this gave us the opportunity to create our new field use policies that we have in place, and they've been working much better than where we have been in the past. Land acquisition, as I mentioned earlier, some of our statistics are over the top compared to the national standard. You can see that 10 to 20 acres of land per 1,000 people is the guideline, and we currently have 34 acres per 1,000 residents. That doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It means that it's just a number. But we take that number and look at that and make sure that we are accommodating the people in the community as best we can, and I think we've done a fantastic job with that. We've gotten a 90% satisfaction rate over the years, with not just with the provision of parks, but the design and maintenance of those parks. And we just strive to continue to meet the expectations or exceed the expectations of those of our residents. Natural resource management. This is a chapter we have struggled with over the last 10 years. It has been a volumed document of plan that we had to put together for our natural resources. We have made great strides in it. This is one of the areas that we're continuing to progress on, and look forward to continuing this one as we move down the road. Natural resources is something that doesn't necessarily change with society, but the expectations of it does. And then parkland development and looking at our parks and greenways, making sure that we're increasing recreational opportunities, just enhancing the quality of life. And our surveys have told us time and time again that we have met those expectations. And over the last several years, here in the last handful of years, we've done some significant parkland development that has been on the books for quite some time, and we're finally seeing that come to fruition. Certainly our bikeway and pedestrian linkages are something of a topic, and this chapter focused on not just enhancing existing systems, but understanding where the key gaps of connections are. We've closed a lot of those gaps, and certainly finding some of the alternative routes that we might be able to offer. And then in community art, we have a fantastic community art plan in place today. You'll recall the Art in Public Places Master Plan was just approved by Council just a month or so ago in our partnership with the Dublin Arts Council. And that was a big check mark on our list to make sure that we have our community art planned well in the future. And then, of course, our historical culture to preserve our heritage. We need to educate our residents and those around us and understand our history, our cultural diversity, and make sure that we are promoting the tourism and making sure people understand where we came from in the past. Our park maintenance, maintaining more than 1,400 acres of parkland. This chapter really took us through the efforts of inventorying our assets and making sure that we had inventories in place and checklists of inspections and certainly tracking of all of our costs associated with our park maintenance. So as far as the implementation, we have really done a great job as a city. I will say that our staff has really hunkered down with this master plan. Most master plans, when you go through the exercise, sometimes they just end up on a shelf and you can use them at your, when it's convenient. But this was a very highly actionable plan, and there were 96 total action steps involved. So we took that and prioritized those into high, medium, and low, and really set out a plan for each one of those action steps to be completed over time. This is the action steps by chapter. You can see some of those chapters were much busier than others, but you can see by the green indication there that those are all the completed action steps within each of those chapters, and the black areas there just show things that are still in progress or things that will be continued to the end of time just because they are an ongoing effort. So we've completed about 88 action steps, which is 92% of the plan. As I mentioned, that is almost unheard of in agency management of these plans, especially a 10-year plan, because 10-year plans tend to get old fairly quickly and we move on to bigger and better priorities. But this one has stayed true, and very proud of our staff and the accomplishments that they've gotten us to get it to the 92% completion. So this is the tricky part, and what we have to look forward to and looking ahead. One of the things that I keep reading about in articles that I have taken a look at is, the pandemic changes that we endured for the last year or so, they're likely to stay here for quite a while. In fact, I was watching a movie the other evening and noticed that nobody was wearing a mask in the movie, and I was a little bit apprehensive about it. I was a little nervous for them. I didn't know what to think. It was kind of interesting how we switched gears. But some of these things that we're looking at that are likely to be in place for quite some time is our operation plans and the changes. We've made a lot of changes to our plans over the last year. We're continuing to evaluate those, but those will always be, considered as we go forward. And then we need to reimagine our revenue production. We have limited operating plans and participation ratios, and agencies are finding ways to reimagine what that revenue production looks like to offset some of those costs to provide those services. We also have a stronger orientation toward health and social services and engaging with the community. You listen to the police department talk about how they need to engage and understand these things. And Lisa even, talked about Christine's efforts in not just our volunteer services, but connecting with all of those in need and socially through the community. And these are not going to go away. We have some side effects that are going to last for quite some time, and we need to stay on the forefront of that, especially with partnerships that we can develop with our health care providers and such. And then there's the remote working environment that is likely here to stay as well. There's a lot of things that will, in all likelihood, come out of that over the years. One of those, in looking at our technology impacts, speaking of remote working, park space and design to promote new social behaviors, that has to be into consideration. You look at the proximity of people in tight areas, whether that's indoor or outdoors. It's going to be something to be considered in the design of these things. And so is the connectivity expectation. People are going to be expected to be connected wherever they go. So we're also looking at some of the autonomous maintenance equipment. It's trying to catch up with the agricultural world. The agricultural world has all kinds of autonomous GPS-driven systems, and the commercial market out there just isn't quite up there yet, but they're gaining on it. And then everything is going to be downloadable. All content is going to be downloadable from augmented reality games, which takes our whole indoor activity areas to a whole different level, or outdoor for that matter. Our playgrounds will talk and walk and interact with you. We'll have walks and exhibits for people to interact with. These are things that are in all likelihood going to be increasing as we move forward. And then we've got the virtual programming. It's something that we had on our radar, but it was way off of the radar screen as far as something we needed really to pay attention to. And here we are just a year later after the pandemic, and it is something that is right in the palm of our hands. So we'll continue to expand that. And then, of course, we've got to consider new and non-traditional forms of recreation. I tend to be a traditionalist when it comes to the thought of parks and recreation and the types of activities. And I've always said, in our industry, we've been fighting a battle against video games and trying to get people engaged. And I said, well, we need to start working with the video games. And lo and behold, a year later, esports comes out. I wish I had the ideas a little bit sooner. I don't know if you've heard of esports or not, but this is a worldwide phenomenon. It is not going away, and it is something of considerable thought that we need to be giving. There are competitions and tournaments around the world. There are professional coaches out there that will teach your child how to be a good gamer. These projected audiences are upwards of 600 million worldwide in just another year and a half to 2 years. There are scholarships being offered at colleges around the country. And then, you look at the traditional versus non-traditional. What are the kids getting out of this, or the adults for that matter? There are a lot of adults participating in this. But it is pandemic friendly. It provides social skills. It's a networking opportunity, social bonds and friendships and so forth. So this is something that is on everybody's radar today in the industry. And then looking at the possibility of, will there be reduced bricks and mortar? When you look at office space inventory, autonomous vehicles, will there be reduced parking spaces that are needed to accommodate businesses and the things that people do? There may be newly available parkland as a result. I mentioned earlier modifying indoor recreational activities and even spaces within recreational facilities. And then taking a look at athletic field space as an opportunity for, something that we have always struggled with capacity issues with our athletic fields. And that is one of those things that, we can certainly take a look at moving forward. So some of these local opportunities, these are pretty much just breaking down what I talked about before. But a couple of things down at the bottom here, and taking a look at our ability for regional partnerships, and where are we connected with the next corridor that we can take a look at the idea of creating recreation districts or park districts that would accommodate the needs of multiple jurisdictions, similar to the park districts we have throughout the state of Ohio. But there are a lot of opportunities there for land acquisition and other opportunities for operational needs. And then certainly taking a look at some philanthropic opportunities to potentially offset some of these reduced revenues. It doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that we would go out and be naming a bridge per se, but there might be some opportunities on a citywide effort to be able to help offset some of these. These are some of the things that a lot of people are looking at throughout the industry. So as far as the process goes, we need to assess our current inventories of everything we do. We need to analyze those and, you know, take a look at how we're funding ourselves to make sure that we're providing the right amount of amenities that we have in the community. We need to engage the community. We talk about that every day, and we need to make sure that we are including everyone to make sure that we are capturing what those needs are to take a look and see where we are in needing to go in the future. And then certainly we need to conduct a needs assessment of past, present, and future. Where have we been? Where are we now? And what are those needs going to be in the future? And then what are those financial implications of those findings? And then certainly we need to develop an implementation plan similar to what we did with our current plan to make sure that we are achieving what we set out to do. But more importantly, being able to measure that completion and define and measure that success. Everything we do tells a story, and we need to be able to tell that story with what we're doing. So going forward, tonight we're here with you, with the Services Committee, and taking a look at this. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about where, you know, with any of this, and perhaps me being able to share that with our next meeting with the Community Services Advisory Commission. That's scheduled to go on April 13th. So I'm looking forward to getting your feedback this evening or between now and then. And I'd love to share that with them as well. But I'm anticipating the commission to take a look at the various topics for what to be included in the update, the project scope, and what are those components within that? What do they think are the main elements? Then we need to take a look at the actual update itself and what budget implications there might be, whether we go and do an internal route or we hire consultants to facilitate conversations throughout the community as we've done in the past. And then propose a timeline about when we might start such an update and about how much time might that take to complete. And then make that recommendation to City Council to move forward. So, you know, I'm looking at, you know, taking time to work through this and have conversations with multiple people, multiple entities to figure out what we want to work forward towards. And then we'll propose that in the operating budget for 2022 to initiate the update. So I will be quiet now for a little bit and love to hear your thoughts and for discussion and or questions you may have. So thank you.
Kathy, do you want to start? I have a million questions. I know you must too.
I know. I thought, Matt, as I have to confess, I read some of the 400 and skimmed some of the 400, you know, truth be told. The scope of this is a little bit mind-blowing, I have to say. So I so appreciate that summary. I had just a couple quick questions. So when you did it last time, did you guys envision, was it a 10-year time horizon, and how long did it take you to put the last project together?
Well, I will say that the last project was intended to be a 10-year lookout. And I will say that it took us multiple years to get that wrapped up, but that wasn't because it couldn't have taken a shorter period of time. It was a matter of we just didn't have the time to dedicate full force to get it done as quickly as we could. It took about 3.5 years, as I remember. I don't envision an update to take nearly that long.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't surprise me at all, Matt. I mean, just completing the inventories and doing some of that. So a couple more questions, and then Jane, I'm sure you have a million too. You know, to me, from a time horizon, it just makes sense to make it marry the 2035 plan, right? To envision that. To me, that just seems like a logical approach. And then, you know, we just had so much more than we even did 10 years ago, right? And a huge central park. I think about your schedule. If you wanted to go back to that timeline before, I am sure that the community, the service advisory group is going to be thrilled to work on this. I know they were real interested when I had an opportunity to speak with them. So Matt, how would you envision sort of eating this elephant with the advisory group?
Well, I think I would like to start out with the understanding that, if we were to start this project in 2019, I think I mentioned this at the council meeting we had. If we were to schedule this, or if we would have done this in 2019 or started, it would have been obsolete. It would come 2020. And I think that's where I get nervous the most, is if we take too far of a stretch outward. Our technology is increasing exponentially as we speak. And I'm nervous that if we start taking our trends and pushing them out beyond 3 years, that we might be missing the goal, the end goal. I think it might be too troublesome for us to even try to figure out what that looks like. I'd rather start small. I talked about, some of the park designs and the connectivity within parks and the providing the people the spaces they need to be able to do the things that they're now doing that they didn't do before. These are new needs that we're recognizing. And I've even quoted myself on certain things about, I used to drive home and I would see, 10 or 20 people out and about on a spring day. When that pandemic hit and everything shut down, I'd see over 100 and 150 people outside. Things have changed significantly. We have our park system, our trail system, shared use pass system, everything we have in the way of leisure has become something that is a dire need for people these days. And it's been a really interesting dynamic to watch. So I would say, to your question, that, I don't want to bite off too much of the apple here. I think we need to take a look at what are the low-hanging fruit, what have we learned over the pandemic, and what are we missing the boat on today that we can establish in a pretty, reasonable amount of time.
So that might be a good first chunk with the group. Yeah, that makes sense, Matt. They seem to be kind of two separate things, don't they? The short-term plan and the little longer-term plan. And the other thing that I kept thinking about when I'm looking at this is I look at maintenance of what we currently have. That's got to, I'm sure, keep you up at night sometimes too, thinking about that. And as I and I'm sure all of us have been out and about more, taking care of our waterways and streams, and there's just so much work there that from a maintenance perspective, as we're dreaming, I think that's really important as well. So that makes sense to work with that group on a shorter term plan, because there's just a lot here to happen. But
yeah, I think you bring up a great point in, maintaining what we have versus providing new of something that is not being able to be maintained. And, we could run into that problem very easily. There is language in our current plan that explains all of that, and we need to emphasize those things. So I would imagine there are a lot of things that are still going to be valid today that are already in the current plan, and we could re-emphasize those. It's not like we're reinventing an entire new plan. It is updating what's in there today. Is this relevant today? Yes, then it stays in. If it's not relevant, then we need to pull it out. It's just, fluff. So yeah, I agree with you.
Matt, I think you kind of hit on it right there. I think I didn't read through the very end, the glossary in every park, but I did read through the chapters. And interestingly enough, I've never seen this plan. And as I read it, I said to myself, this is probably one of the best plans I've seen in the city that actually has been implemented. And I see it all the time, even with the tree preservation program, the number of trees, the amount of parkland that a developer has to get. It was a very intense plan. And I'm disappointed that John couldn't attend today to kind of give us a little history on it too. But for me, I think you've got a great plan, and you just need in the update to go through, as you said, what's currently still valuable, what can we improve on. The plan even talks about how you take existing land that you have and reimagine it, which opens you up to the future and the whole visioning process and some of the things that you're talking about, technologies and e-gaming or pandemic related recreational activities we never gave any thought to, but how can we utilize them in maybe park spaces we never did. Now we have a riverfront that people are kayaking on, they never did, because now it's open and available. I think that CSAC should be looking at the plan as a foundational piece, and then looking at the strategies. What do we have in there? What was implemented? What is still missing? What can we enlarge on that maybe we implemented, but now it can be even better than it was in its implementation? And I personally think the consultant would be a big help to you, maybe even the same consultant. I don't know, because they have the history. I don't even know if that consultant's still around, but it seems to me that the way this plan was laid out, with the strategies, the issues identified, the strategies and action plans identified, and I love the fact that the plan's intent and objectives and huge description of why these particular chapters were, how they were described. It was a very well done plan. I mean, I'm just so impressed with it. So I would like to see a consultant just take some of the burden off, so that the staff can be creative in what they think they can add to it, instead of having the workload of having to write the darn thing. You know, to me, it just makes for, you guys know what, your staff knows what this city enjoys and loves. And I think their efforts could be better put to use there than having to write the plan, the update. The other thing
what I thought also very interesting is each of the chapters had policies. You know, potentially pulling out those policies. I think that would be useful. I have seen this plan. I had, Jane, but I hadn't, you know, we don't come back to it on a regular basis. So from that perspective, I had not. But I thought it was so helpful from a policy level to pull those out, because there's a lot of policy in there. And to the point, Matt, about the revenue is going to be a different thing going forward. And we got to think hard about that. And maintenance policies and acquisition policies. So potentially pulling that out, Jane, and you know, maybe that's something council works on in parallel. I don't know what your thought about that, Matt, but I thought that was really well done too.
Yeah, there's a fairly significant part of our plan that talks about cost recovery. And, you know, even city councils, current and past, have explored different cost recovery models over the years. And it doesn't mean that, you know, any one of them is right or wrong or indifferent. It is, you know, it's reacting to the financial times that we're in. So I would envision that, you know, one of the things that I would love to do is spend some time. I don't know how much, I haven't really analyzed it, but I'd love to sit and go through each of the chapters with the Community Services Advisory Commission, go through the policies that were established as a result, and ask the question in your mind as a resident here in the community: does this make sense to you? And if not, I can try to explain it further, or maybe it doesn't make sense anymore. So just have that open-ended conversation and dialogue and move through each chapter, and I can extrapolate some of those key things out of that to get us a head start. I wouldn't want a consultant to come in here and drive us from the infancy stage to the final stage. I would like to, for my own benefit, to learn a little bit more from conversation with the commission and with, you know, maybe even some of the stakeholders throughout the community.
I totally agree with you. I think that is the first step. When I mentioned the consultant, I just meant so that you didn't have to go through the work of rewriting, you know, whatever it is that you get to at the end point. They can listen to these conversations if that is helpful to you. But I agree. I think there are a lot of policies in there that we follow today that I hear brought before council all the time. Well, our policy about this is such and such, and it's laid inside this master plan. The other thing that I noticed is that because there's so much policy in it, and there's so much great direction, and there's so much value to the fact that this master plan kind of created the character of this community in so many ways. and is so valued by the community that a conversation should include, I believe, the Planning and Zoning Commission, Architecture Review Board. Those commissions that have to also implement the plan need to understand it better probably than they do, and I don't think they do very well, because there's a lot of information here. So to me, this is a front and center plan, because economic development is a big wing. When we talked about quality of life, Kathy, in the 2035, our natural resources, our parks, has carried our quality of life through one of the hardest years ever on its back. And I think that in every survey we've ever given to our citizens, they all say they love the natural resources, the parks, the ability to get out. This is our heart and soul. This is a big deal, I think. So I'm absolutely in support of taking whatever chunks of this that you need to do. I think council would be totally behind. I am totally behind getting this update to a point where we can really enrich our parks and natural resources. So topic wise, yeah, I mean, Kathy, I just want to hit on topic before we go, so he has that.
Topic, I'm not sure I'm following there.
I had some questions about what topics to go forward, Matt. I think that was one of them, one of the questions you asked about.
Oh, I was just curious if there was something in particular that you had interest for us to really engage on as part of the update.
You know, one of the things that I think to your point about the timing couldn't be better in so many ways, because people have discovered and rediscovered. So, you know, doing a survey at some, I mean, and it's not urgent, it doesn't have to be next week, but over the next summer or whatever, and really finding a way to capture what these current new discoveries are, I think we'll uncover things that, in addition to what you uncovered, will be good food for consideration. I also think about, you know, the new park that is about to open, Riverside Crossing Park, and the programming that, the potential of the programming there. How do we manage that? You mentioned supporting tourism, I mean, that's going to be a level of complexity. Thank goodness, how wonderful actually to have this problem, how wonderful. But a level of complexity that we really haven't had, other than perhaps around our big festival parks. But really, that might be a new dynamic that I think is short term, right, is going to be in front of us pretty quick, that I think. And
we'll
then
probably be finished with that policy before we start this update. But yes, you're right. That is, I mean, that's the kind of forward thinking that we're already doing. We've been working on this for quite some time. It's tough because we're always so busy, and then, you know, we get caught up in things, and so we're working towards that, and hopefully we'll get that nailed down here pretty soon.
So sequencing that, you know what sequence you need to do the things you need to do with CSAC and bringing that forward.
Well, I do. I feel like I do, and but I wanted to bring it forward to multiple people to get input and see where their perspectives were, and so, you know, I'm wide open to whatever we want to do as a entity and as a community. I just want to make sure we get it right, and, you know, I feel like I know a lot, but it doesn't mean it's always the right thing. So.
Well, you usually pretty much nail it.
And I thought about working in our parks too, using them as those spaces. And I've heard that from some residents, right? I want to have, I'm going to call them workspaces in the park, hotspot enabled places to, you know, and those are probably short term. But when we think about placemaking and that, I think that's a wonderful opportunity, which we probably wouldn't have leaned in so heavily had we not experienced what we have. So, you know, I think that's a very timely and interesting topic too.
I do too. I think there's pressure. Just quickly, a few things that come to my mind as I read through each chapter. The connectivity piece is really, really important as we continue to build our infrastructure. And I know Morpsey is looking at connecting the bikeways from one community to another. I think that connectivity and how we create multimodal transportation incorporating, our parkland. And it might just be more than bicycles, right? It might be scooters. It might be little motorized vehicles that we haven't even imagined yet. It might be making sure that we have lanes that are available parallel to bike paths. I'm not sure what that is. The other one is the natural resources, the topography that was in, I think, chapter, I forget which one it was, but there's so much developmental pressure for the best pieces of available land. And if we're not really careful, we'll lose the beauty of the natural resource topography, the woodlands, all the things that were identified in that chapter. And I think that that's something that I would really like to hear CSAC talk about, because those developmental pressures will make or break the end game when it comes to whether or not this community is going to stay as beautifully green and as vibrant when it comes to their parkland, because I think it's just going to get harder and harder. And then, and I think they identified so many pieces, the vistas, the views, the sunrise and sunset over the river could easily be gone if the buildings get too high. That's all policy in the end. And this is right here in this plan. The other thing that I thought was really important was, and it was mentioned in park maintenance, the two priorities were promotion of sustainable practices, and secondly, historic preservation. And it was considered to be forefront of the staff when in this plan. And I don't mean historic preservation of the buildings. I'm once again talking about the historical character of this landscape that is so precious and has such a soul to it. So those are important to me, at least, and from my perspective, and everybody's talking about it. The Historic District Task Force, the Connectivity Task Force that J.M. Rayburn's working on, I think it has to be a multi-staff conversation, because everybody's got a piece of the pie here going on, and it all falls right back in your lap in this updated plan. So I think that's kind of a good thing, really.
Yeah, I would envision almost every department involved with this plan, as it was back in 2010. So yeah, you're right. It does require a lot more perspective than little old Matt.
Well, you'll be a great organizer, though, of all the perspectives. So anything else, Kath? I want to give the opportunity to finish up with our last item.
Yeah, the only other thing that and this is sort of a perspective I always think about, is how can we use technology to help us with sensors and measure things, to Jane's point, to know before it's too late that something has occurred. And I know technology's come such a long way down those particular pathways, pun intended. But, to figure out how we incorporate some of that when we think about being a connected city. Are we connected to our treasures? And I know that's an emerging field, but that would be a really good conversation to have with CSAC. And, how do we imagine some of that too moving forward? Because it just wasn't viable or even feasible 10 years ago, but it certainly will be in the next 10, right? So
Absolutely.
I appreciate your focus on this. I think it's incredibly timely with all the other work and so important. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Appreciate all the perspective.
Sure. Thank you. All right. Our last item is talking about the bridge parapet. So I know we had this last year. I think we talked about the bridge parapet. So I'm not sure who's presenting this one.
Oh, I've got this one too.
You have it, Matt. Okay.
I do. Let me see if I can share my screen again. Sorry, I'm stuck on my other slide.
That's okay.
Okay. Let's see. You see that okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I believe there was a series of renderings in your packet of a variety of different options. You'll recall back when this was brought up, I believe Councilmember Reiner brought it up some time ago. We did reach out to the artist that designed the artwork on the bridge and the parapet area of the bridge, and asked them to provide us with a few options that they would see fit. And then staff took the liberty of also adding a couple of different colors within the Dublin branding spectrum. So to take a good look at what we've got here to work with, this is just the baseline of what is there today. Up top there, you can see the different colors that were explored. I'll just go through each one by one, and I'll just open it up for a conversation that you all might have and take it from there. But the first one is actually a Dublin green. It is part of the branding spectrum that we have for the city. That is bear with me in that everybody's monitor is seeing a different color right now. So to get an absolute color on this, it's not going to be exactly the same for each individual. So just keep that in mind as we go through this. So this takes a little bit of an outlook, and then closer up, this would be the color of that and what that would look like. And then the alternate dark green. And then a close-up of that. And there's the brick red that the artist provided as an option. And then a close-up of that. This is Dublin gray. It is part of our branding spectrum. With a close-up. And then the artist green, very similar to the Dublin green, but a little different shade.
Is that the artist? When you say artist green, did the artist suggest that, or is it just called artist green?
I'm going to say yes, but you know, I can't verify that right now off the top of my head. Okay. I believe that is the one that the artist provided in the way of a green color, because the Dublin green is our brand color.
Okay.
And then that is the close-up look of that.
Matt, I have a question. Is this only going on that stretch? It's not going on the other relief anywhere else. This is just going across the bridge like that.
I think it's just going across the bridge, and there's the Celtic knot, I believe, that is also included in there somewhere.
Okay. Was there ever a suggestion, I remember this suggestion, and I think it came from engineering, about taking almost like an oil that you would put over the concrete, and it would simply give a dimension, but not a color. Was that ever brought up to the artist by any chance?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I mean, so if we don't like any of these colors that stand out, we can certainly look at different options.
Jane, I think that was discussed, and I think the artist said that wasn't terribly feasible. I remember that discussion, and maybe what it is, you know what I mean? Maybe what you're asking isn't what was referred to last time, but I know that was discussed. You know, I think one of the challenges is just the sheer size of this. It's so small. You know, I looked for it the last couple times, you know, I went through the dimensions of this just aren't, you know, to make it pop, if that's the goal. I mean, for me, I would prefer the gray of anything that I see here. My personal would be, yeah, just to make it pop, I guess, to along Jane's point. I don't like the red at all personally. I don't think that Dublin green, I just don't, I know that's in our brand palette, but it just doesn't feel us, if you would. So the alternate dark green looks like olive to me that doesn't fit our palette. So of any of them, the artist green is probably my favorite. It feels closer, but again, what I'm seeing and what you're projecting may not be, you know, but I would go if it was me, I would go with that gray and darken it, because it's going to feel to me the most sophisticated of anything over time, because if the stuff chips and fades and one part of the green fades faster than the other part of the green because of Mother Nature, we're never going to be happy with it, right? We're always going to say, paint it again, paint it again, paint it again. And I just think we will. And so to me, the way to make it pop a bit, which is I think maybe what Jane was saying, if these are our choices, I would go with the dark gray personally. That's just my thought.
Yeah, I also worry paint just doesn't hold up. It fades. It looks on concrete. It's hard, between the salt and the ice and the snow and the dirt. But I can understand why we want to try to give a little depth to that, because I'll be honest with you, I didn't even notice it was there until we had this conversation. So I agree. I think some dimension, but I do worry once again about a paint. So I do think I remember, Kathy, that we talked about this, but we were going to explore whether or not there was a concrete oil that would actually soak into that relief and then just maintain, that depth.
And I think the answer back, no. I think that was explored.
See, I don't remember. I have to look back.
I want to share, I guess John is online but has no audio. I just got a note from Jenny.
Oh, really?
And he is advocating for the Dublin green or the artist green. So I want to be sure to share that. So I guess he's here but has no audio connectivity. So wanted to be sure we got John's perspective in here.
Okay. Yeah, no, I didn't. Yeah, okay.
I don't know if John could use the chat if he wanted to say, if he doesn't have audio, if he wanted to say something else. But and again, my only concern with that is over time, if part of it fades or part of it chips, what's the maintenance of that? So that
right.
So I agree it would be, I think it is important if we're going to have it to make it pop a bit more, because you cannot see it. You're driving, it's not visible. You got to look for it or know it's there. Again, I would advocate for the gray, but if not that.
Yeah, let's see that gray one more time. Yeah, I guess I would go with I like the artist green. I like a more muted green. I'm not opposed to the gray. I guess I would prefer to see it in an oil instead of a paint if we're going to go like that, if that were something that would work. And Matt, I don't know, you might have to go back and ask engineering about that one again, because I don't recall them having an answer for us, but Kathy does. So Kathy's younger than me, so she probably has a better memory than I do.
Well,
I can certainly.
At 29, I remember a lot, Jane.
So,
do you recall? I know we asked the question and I thought it was explored, but do you recall?
I do not, but I can certainly take your thoughts back. I mean, if you're looking at the Dublin gray or the artist green as two viable options to consider, I can take it back and see what types of coloring mechanisms we can use as options, whether it's paint or it's stain or what other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we think it'll preserve over time, John's advocating for the green. Sounds like Jane would. My only pushback is just what that's going to look like 3 years from now.
Yeah.
So if the folks that are going to do this feel like it'll have some longevity, I would pick the artist green. But if not, I would advocate for the gray.
Yeah. I will say this, I don't want to pick a color off of a computer monitor. So whatever we decide, if we're going to look at a color, it needs to be put on a real piece of concrete so we know what it looks like, because there's nothing worse than picking a color off a computer monitor and then painting on a bridge and then hating it afterwards. So,
yeah, I agree.
Because there's color on that bridge right now, and I don't know how that will look against that color that appears to be on that bridge right now.
Yeah, we need to match everything. Yeah, you're right.
we just can't pick it off a computer monitor. So this is not an emergency situation, painting this little parapet, but I do think that we could probably get a couple of samples of the color in real life when we all can take a look at it on site even, because I thought some of that concrete was even colored kind of a peachy color, kind of almost like a tan. It's not a typical concrete color either. So I don't want to pick it off of a computer monitor.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, we can take this as a starting point and keep exploring.
Down to two options, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, public gray and artist green.
Yeah. And maybe oil, maybe.
See what they look like. Yeah, and whatever's going to preserve it the best in terms of saturation and longevity. But
You know what they say, once you paint something, you're always painting it.
That's just it. You almost don't know if that's the way. Okay.
that's why I advocate for gray.
Right. And that's why, because we did look, I remember after this last meeting, we did look at, there are concrete stains. They're stains. They're not paint that probably would be a much better product than paint. And
there are actually tinted colored sealants that you can put on concrete. So
Yes.
nothing would absorb in it and it would protect it from the UV
and we
elements.
could be looking at that, Matt, instead of paint, really.
All right.
I think
Matt,
right now we're just trying to get an idea of color.
you're on it. Yeah. I would say,
Alright.
or do you agree with those two? And I think John's advocating for the green, so I think he'd be okay with that too.
Yes, but I'm asking you to look at stains because I think that's better than paint. Stains.
Yes, we'll look at all options for sure.
All
Yeah.
right. Okay. All right. Anything else? Nope.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Calling this meeting to adjournment. All right. Thank you, Kathy. And sorry, John. We're just going to have to get you fixed here. All right. We'll get the
Enjoy
technology
the
working.
everyone. I'm going to go walk on our park paths. That's where I'm going.
It's a good idea. All right.
Bye.
All right. Good night, all. Thank you.